All right. Well, thank you for joining us today for the solar solutions for poultry farmers. I want to thank you for joining us. The first thing that I do want to cover, along with some housekeeping, is that this is intended as an educational presentation. So while we are a for-profit company, this is all information you can use, however you decide to go forward, going forward with solar. We certainly hope that you will give us the opportunity to give you a bid if you do determine that solar is right for your organization. But again, all of this is information just for your use. So we will just jump in and get started. All right, well, first thing I want to say welcome to everyone and just kind of go over the things that we're going to cover and what solar can do for your operation. Now, solar generation can really give you control over your operation costs, and it can also increase your reliability when you add a battery. This can help with demand charges and things like that when they apply. So in this webinar, we will be discussing the benefits to poultry farmers, implementing solar on your farm, and then have time for discussing questions. Now, before we get to that part, I am just going to cover a little bit about our company, just so you understand that we have a lot of experience and expertise in the solar industry and working with agriculture. All right, so just want to jump in and talk about our company. First of all, we are the largest dedicated solar design and engineering company in the region. We've got more than 17 years of experience working across 7 states. We have almost, coming up on 3,000 installations, so we certainly know what we're doing. We've got strong emphasis on the technical. Lots of NABCEP certified installers. We are a family-owned business, a woman-owned business. We're certified with different vendors and part of the Amicus collective. And now I'd like to just present what we're going through today. In the first session, we're going to talk about benefits to poultry farmers. First, the cost effectiveness. Second, load management, analyzing electric rates and incentives, tax benefits and grants. And so I want to introduce to you Steve Killian. He has been in the power generation industry for a long time and has worked directly with a lot of agriculture in the solar business, in the solar field. So I'll pass it over to you.
Thank you, Julie.
Of course.
And welcome, everyone. Thank you for coming. Just a little background on myself. Like Julie said, I've been in the power generation industry for 40 plus years. I really got involved in the solar and microgrid industry back in 2016 and actually installed my first solar project at a poultry farm in 2019. So let's continue on here. Talk about the cost effectiveness of a solar system for you. Solar can substantially reduce your farm operations costs. Based on my travels in the industry, and I've been traveling the Western Kentucky primarily for the last 5-6 years, working with the poultry farmers, I find that your electric utility costs account for approximately 60% of your total overhead costs. Solar can reduce this by 70 to 100%. Utility costs, as we all know, they're going to continue to rise over the next 30 years. And the nice thing about solar is once you've placed the system in operation, of course, we can calculate what that solar system is going to do over the next 30 years, but you have a fixed cost, dollar per kilowatt for the next 30 years. It's not going to rise. It's not going to, like utility costs are going to do. With the Inflation Reduction Act that was committed late last fall. There's just, and we're going to go through them, a ton of new incentives, extended incentives that now can pay for 85% plus of the total project costs of these installations. Demand management, we call it. That's when we put in a solar system, and let's say we don't have net metering available, and we want to capture that excess energy. We can install an energy storage system, which is Mirror batteries. We're a Tesla dealer, and store that energy and discharge it on a timely basis. Maybe not everybody knows what net metering is, but it's a state law. It was enacted back 2018, 2019. When I put my first installation in 2019, net metering laws allowed for 30 kW to be connected per meter. Today, that law has been extended to, and we can connect up to 45 kW. And what net metering does is you're not always using all the energy necessarily, especially on a poultry farm. You know, when I think about how you turn your inventory and you're shut down a couple weeks in between inventory, you're using less energy. Well, where's that energy going? With net metering, that energy will be going back to the utility company, and they will be crediting you on your next bill 1-to-1. So if they're charging you 12 cents a kilowatt, they're going to give you back 12 cents a kilowatt in the form of a credit. No, they don't send you cash, they don't pay you a check, but it's a credit on your next bill. So without net metering, batteries may be considered. Without net metering and batteries, you know, the system would probably be sized to capture 50 to 70% of your energy bill. With net metering, we can capture 100%. Without net metering and the addition of batteries, we could capture 100% as well. Batteries, though, are not cheap. They're costly, and they will prolong the payback of the entire system. So one of the first things we do when we meet with a customer is ask for a copy of their electric utility bill. You, just as you open up your electric bill when you get it every month and you look at it and, okay, I owe them $230, but that bill's comprised of 6, 8, 10 line items of cost. Sometimes difficult understanding the bill, but we'll do that for you. Provide us a copy of your utility bill. Most utility bills today show in graphic and or text form what your energy use has been the prior 12 months each month. We do need that history. We need to look at your 12 months energy. And if your one bill does not show the past 11 months, then we would need a copy of each of the last 12 months. We'll analyze your bill. We'll determine what your annual energy consumption is, and then we'll size a solar system based on that best fits your application and economize your installation. Incentives, tax benefits, and grants. This is probably the gold star slide of the whole presentation. With the advent of the Inflation Reduction Act last fall, we have tremendous incentives and grants and opportunities for solar installation. First of all is the USDA REAP grant. If you're not familiar with it, REAP stands for Rural Energy for America program. It's a program that's been around a long time, but up until the Inflation Reduction Act, a REAP grant would only fund 25% of the project. As I understand it, with the Inflation Reduction Act, the federal government has taken that pool of money, if you will, for REAP grants and extended that tenfold. There's a lot of money there. It'll now pay for up to 50% of the costs of your system. The investment tax credit, while it's been around for a while, when it was first instigated back in 2020, it started out at 30% and then was reducing each year by 4%. The Inflation Reduction Act has brought that back to a full 30% for the next 10 years, no reduction. There is a possibility of a 10% ITC bonus. We can talk about that later if you like. The Inflation Reduction Act has also added accelerated depreciation to the system. You can also go to the KDF and obtain up to a $10,000 grant for your installation. And there are reduced loan interest rate available through several sources. So all in all, if you just take the REAP, the investment tax credit, the accelerated depreciation, those items add up to about 85% of the total cost of your system.
Awesome. Let's give Steve a second to catch his breath. We had a few people join after I made the sort of opening remarks, so I just wanted to jump back in. I also forgot to let you know where to put in questions. So you can use chat and the Q&A feature. If you have questions through, we'll definitely answer those at the end. And then I also, at the beginning, explained that even though we are a for-profit company, this is meant to be an educational seminar or webinar. We do hope you will give us the opportunity, if you do choose to go solar, to give you a bid, but you should be able to use all this information on your own as well. All right. So in this session, we're going to talk about implementing solar on your farm. So we'll talk about feasibility considerations, talk about roof or ground location for the solar, talk a little more about financing, kind of go through the solar economics. We'll also talk about resources and supports that are available for you, and then run through a few case studies. All right, back to you, Steve.
Thank you.
Of course.
Okay. So, taking a look at your operation, there's a couple things to consider for solar. Number one is location of the solar array itself. Is it best to be mounted on the roof of your poultry houses? Is it better to be mounted on the ground? I can answer that question in part. Almost 99% of the owners I have met in the poultry industry do not want the solar on the roof of their poultry houses. They're worried about, roof, wind damage, etc., and then having to deal with the solar there. And the solar for most of these installations is not going to take up a lot of space on your property. Secondly, of course, we'll review and take a look at your annual energy use and your current electric rate. Most rates in Western Kentucky are in the 12 to 14 cents per kilowatt range. These systems, let's say for for poultry houses, you'll find that the solar fixed cost is going to generate over the next 30 years in the 4 to 5 cents per kilowatt range. Is net metering available? Backing up, talking about whether it is or isn't will determine how we size the system as well. So again, locating solar, where do we put this? If you do want to consider the roof of the poultry house, that's fine. Nothing wrong with it. Solar on residential roofs and commercial roofs, etc. But solar needs a southern exposure. That's the best place for it. So you would have to have your houses run east to west with a southern pitch. And of course, we always look at shading. Hopefully there's no trees around or other structures that would shave that portion of the roof. If it's placed on the roof, we would do nothing different as we do on any other roof. We'd have to come in, make an evaluation of the structure you have. And that may be just taking photos, making out a sketch of the structure, and we would send that off to a civil engineer to get his stamp of approval that your structure will support the addition of solar. For ground mount systems, really they can be located anywhere, but just like anything else, there's costs involved in conduit and copper. So the closer we can get the solar array to the interconnection point, which on most farms is where the meter, where your generator and automatic transfer switch are, we want to get as close to that location as we can. Financing options. We as a company do not offer internal financing. We can refer you to various third-party sources. But I found also in your industry, in the ag industry especially, the community banks know you well, knows the customer well, and they're very apt to provide you a loan for solar. With our proposals anyway, when you see one of our proposals, and we've been patted on the back several times by bankers, it provides that banker all of the economic, financial information he would ever want to determine whether he would finance this project. Of course, there's third-party financing, and there are low-interest loans available through the USDA as well. So some of the economics, like I said, our final detailed proposal will give you all the financial and economics of the project. You'll see your ROI, the payback of the system, 30-year cumulative cash flow. It'll show you what your pre and post solar results are, and the solar capture of the system. In other words, how much of your electric bill we're capturing. So resources and support. Like I said, the Inflation Reduction Act is where really the cream of the crop is right now on the incentives and the grants that are available. USDA, Kentucky Agriculture Development Fund. They, like I said earlier, can provide up to, from what I understand, we don't do this, but they'll provide up to a $10,000 grant. I understand the submission for that is quite easy. When we reach the point where we all agree, our company will refer you to several grant writers. You'll need to contract with a third-party grant writer for the REAP grant. And I understand community banks, with their loans, they can go to the KDF, get 50% of the funding for the project from them, blend that rate with their retail rate, and offer you a lower interest rate versus retail. So here's a case study. This is a system I installed or had installed back in 2019. Back in 2019, again, was prior to 45 kW net metering. We only had 30 kW net metering. This particular farm was 4 houses, and they had 3 meters they wanted us to connect to. 2 of the meters each fed 2 houses, and then the third meter actually fed the shop on the property. We connected and split out this solar system to all 3 meters. And again, the max we could do at the time was 30 kW per meter. So we knew we couldn't capture 100%, but all indications were we could capture 70% of his energy bill. And that has proved itself year over year since 2019. The owner is quite happy with what he's got. You know, we've taken I don't remember offhand, $25,000 electric bill annually and reduce that bill by 70%. So with that, the payback was approximately 4 years for him. Again, it was sold in late 2019. He wanted to take advantage of the 30% ITC, which he did at tax time in 2020. At that time, we were able to, after the fact, file for a REAP grant in March of 2020, which would only pay max 25%. And we were awarded that grant at that time. Now, the rules have changed slightly on REAP. A caveat today is you cannot put a solar system in the ground and submit for a REAP grant afterwards. They will not pay for something you've already done, let's say. Once you submit the REAP grant and the USDA has acknowledged that submission, everything's in good shape, the owner can decide to go ahead and put the project in the ground. Of course, he's taking the chance whether he gets the REAP grant or not, but he can move forward at that time. But you can't build it, then ask for the REAP grant today. So here's another farm. It's actually next door to the previous case study. It's 4 houses as well. And of course, now we can, the site, we can net meter with the utility there. And because we can connect up to 45 kW, we looked at their energy bills and all, and it was going to take a little over 38 kW per meter to capture 100% of their energy. So that's what we're installing there. We filed for a REAP grant earlier this year, but before the full rollout of the Inflation Reduction Act, we were able to submit for a 40% funding The project was awarded that 40% funding. So he got the 40%, the 30% ITC, accelerated depreciation, and that all figures out to be about a 4-year payback on that system there. I can tell you since then, with the 50% REAP, 30% investment tax credit, accelerated depreciation, most of these installations, they're not cookie cutter, but they're all pretty close, are coming in at 1.5 to 3-year paybacks. So here's what we would call a typical project. I mean, I've traveled the area a lot. No doubt, there's properties with 8 and 16 poultry houses, but 4 poultry houses seems to be a commonplace. With 2 meters, we can connect like we did on the previous slide, 38 kW per meter. That varies a little bit by the size of the houses. I know that, I've run into 40 by 500 foot, and I've run into 50 by 600 foot, and no doubt they take a little bit more energy. But again, with the 50% grant, 30% ITC, and accelerated depreciation, that typical project would come in at a 1.6-year payback. And we would be capturing at or near 100% of their energy.
All right, well, let's again give Steve a little bit of break. And I'm going to walk through sort of a step-by-step guide to transitioning to solar. So this would be the journey that you would kind of take, that you would take to installing solar and transitioning over to solar for your operation. So like Steve mentioned, the first thing that we do is ask for annual utility bills. We would do that. Any installer would need that information. And we need that so we can determine the best fit. We need to know how much energy you're using. We need to understand the rates that you have, the net metering, all of that information figures into the right solar system. Then what we would do is we would use satellite imagery. We have access to LiDAR data, which gives us shading information and things like that. And we would put together a remote quote. So this would be a proposal that would have an estimated budget and also a rendering of where the solar would be and the connections and things that we would need. If at this point you're looking at that and it looks good for you, we would then set up a site visit. So at a site visit, Steve would come out and he would look at your meter. He would take different measurements. He would just take a look at everything on site to update any assumptions that we may have made in the remote proposal. At that point, we'd put together a detailed proposal with a final design and final pricing, and then would send you a customer contract. Now, like Steve mentioned before, you have to submit a grant application and have that application acknowledged by the USDA before you can do any work or pay anything towards solar. So it's that point that we would give referrals for, grant writers, and we work with a number of different grant writers. So we make sure that we work with writers that have, a very good reputation, have a good track record of getting awards. They will work with you initially to do a scoring to see how likely it is that you would get an award so that you can make a more educated sort of decision there. From that point, hopefully you get the award. We move into detailed engineering and permitting. We take care of everything. And from there, installation and inspections. All right. So at this point, we can answer any questions. Steve, was there anything that you thought about that during
Yeah,
the wish you had
let,
mentioned, or?
let me add one other caveat about REAP and the grant writing and that
Please.
process, if you will. Prior to last year and the Inflation Reduction Act, we could only submit for projects in excess of $80,000 once a year, and that was in March, in the March submission. You could submit for REAP grants for projects $80,000 and less twice a year, March and October. But with the additional funding that they've put towards this last year, they, I guess, figured it out. Oh my gosh, this is going to be a nightmare. The influx of grants we're going to receive in March. So they started out this year. We had a March submission. And again, that was only at 40%. They didn't have all their act together for the full 50%. They had another submission in June. They had another submission in September. And we're having a submission this December.
Mm-hmm.
Next year, it'll be each quarter. So January, February, March, we'll have another submission. And I can tell you, we have people working throughout Indiana, Illinois, Ohio, and Kentucky is really blessed. We have a pot full of money here. The USDA does. And they have more than enough money in these last 3 go-arounds to fund every project that was submitted to them. Unless there was something wrong with the submission, all the projects got funded and then some. I know in Illinois, it's totally upside down right now. They've got 3 times as many applications as they do funding for the projects going on there. So it's like anything else. Get it while the getting's good. These incentives are available now. And you nor I can crystal ball what's going to happen next November, the elections, and how that could affect all of this currently. So I just got to say, if you're interested in solar, now's the time to look into it.
And then Steve, just a quick question. When you do submit an application, if you don't get it in the first go around, you do get 3 more. It does get pushed forward for 3 more.
Right, exactly,
so,
exactly.
If for some reason they ran out of money in one pot or one thing, it could get funded in the next one. So,
and as far as timing there too, once if you're, let's say, submitting for this December go around, again, you'll get an acknowledgement of your submission, but you will not get notice of award or not, probably for 2 to 3 months. Okay. So anything submitted in December, you may not know that you have that award or not until almost March.
Okay.
Okay.
That's great. All right. Well, I do not see any questions in the Q&A or in chat. So I guess hopefully that means we've covered everything. And so I just want to thank everyone for taking time out of your Wednesday night to join us for this. If you do feel, after kind of going through this with us, that you might want to just see what solar might be, we offer a no obligation quote, as many installers do. And then I've got Steve's direct contact information there on the screen. I will be trying to send this out to everyone tomorrow, so you can watch it again. And if you have any questions, please feel free to grab Steve's contact information there and reach out to us, or respond to my email tomorrow when I send out the link to the video. All right, well, we won't take any more of your evening. We'll let you off early. And thanks again for coming.
Thank you, everyone. Thanks for coming. Bye now.